Thanks, Pete. My name's Ian. I'm an addict. Hello, everyone. Hi. I was driving up and I was thinking, well, what should I talk about tonight? Because I don't really have a fixed chair. I just talk off the top of my head each time. I kind of go with the flow. And I was figuring what I would talk about would be the steps and the magic that I've had of the experience of working the steps and having the steps alive in my life. But to kind of qualify, I suppose, without doing a drug-a-log, I got sober in 2001. I was 29 at the time, and I'm 45 now, though I appreciate I look a lot younger, thank you. But I, from the age of 26 through to 29, I knew that my body was dying. I knew that I was killing myself. I knew that that I was banging up a lot by then, and I knew that my circumstances were caving in on me. My world was getting smaller and smaller, and the things that I used to enjoy doing were no longer accessible to me. And as my life got smaller, my day-to-day lifestyle was simply going out and finding the means and the ways to score, and then scoring and then doing that again. It's like there was no quality of life outside of getting the next tenner. People asked me what it was that got me to a point where I was ready to stop. And the reason why I was ready to stop was because I could no longer tolerate the person that I'd become. I no longer liked who I had become. I no longer appreciated the lifestyle that I found myself cornered into. And in particular, I just couldn't bear the fact that everyone who came out and showed me love or tried to support me or help me, I was either stealing off them, manipulating from them, lying to them, bullshitting them, taking advantage of them. I wasn't giving any reciprocal love. I was simply just like a sponge. I was just taking everything. I could no longer tolerate the way that I knew that I needed to behave like that, even though I couldn't bear to be that person. And it was that acknowledgement, that self-acknowledgement to myself, that I simply couldn't live with myself much longer, which is where, for me, I pinpoint as being that moment of change, and in our literature we refer to that as like the desperation of a drowning man. I got to a point where I knew that I either needed to sort this out or I needed to check out. And over those 3 years, I tried various different methods of detoxing and getting myself straight, but. For me, what happened was I was in this squat in West London, injecting cocaine and naked, because I like to get naked when I'm injecting cocaine. I presume you all do too. I'm just assuming that. Mainly because when I'm banging up, I sweat so much, and I just need to take all my clothes off because I just get so drenched. Nothing perverted or sexual going on, because I couldn't get a hard on for life of me. But banging up cocaine and really high on cocaine. In November in the year 2000, I wrote this letter, and I don't know why I wrote this letter. I wasn't a particularly avid writer. It wasn't something that I did a lot of, but I wrote this letter, and I started this letter with the words "Dear God." And I don't know why I addressed it to God, because I don't believe in God. I wasn't a religious person. I wasn't anything that was relevant to me. You're either on the vibe or off the vibe. That was kind of my association as a raver. But for some reason, high on cocaine, I wrote this letter and it said, "Dear God." And the contents of that letter, to paraphrase, were, I'm going to sort myself out. And when I sort myself out, please God help me feel okay about myself. I just wanted to feel okay. And when I first started coming to CA, in the promises, where it says, "and we will know peace," I always used to say that a little bit louder. That was really relevant for me, that I would know peace in my head. And so I wrote this letter asking God that once I've sorted myself out, please let me have a bit of peace and feel better about myself. Which is a real kind of flip to how I was as a junkie, where I demanded that God sort this out. Get me out of this situation, get me out of Nick, get me out of this. God help me score, God help me find a parking space, whatever it is. Here I was saying, I'm going to sort this out, and I just hope God's going to make me feel good. And it's only retrospectively, in hindsight, that I realised how powerful that message was. But that was in November, and then in a matter of weeks, there was this girl who was scoring weed off me, who was in NA, and she 12-stepped me into an NA meeting, and at this NA meeting I heard this wonderful statement that I clung on to. They said, the only way to stop doing drugs is to stop doing drugs. I thought, that's fucking obvious. but I could never have thought of that myself. While I was in active addiction, I could never have figured out for myself that I actually needed to stop doing the drugs in order to beat the drugs. I figured I could just, use them differently, stop banging up, start smoking again, use different drug or go to a different location or hang out with different people or whatever it was. Try and control it. All my detoxes would show me was that I would sit there and grin and bear it for 5 days, banging up ketamine, which is an anaesthetist, so you didn't feel any withdrawal. It's not a recommendation if you're looking at detoxing. And then the weekend would come, and I'd figure that my system was cleaned out and I could use half as much, twice as fast, and get back on the cocaine. And of course, I never did crack without smack. And so off we were again. And so hearing for the first time that I needed to get abstinent was massive for me, really massive. And a whole load of circumstances grew from that, but my sobriety date wasn't when I did my last cold turkey detox, which ended around January the 9th, something around then. But actually my sobriety date is March 2001, and I spent those first few months, I did some time in the treatment centre, and obviously while I was in there I was messing around and not completely obeying all of the rules and regulations. But so March the 16th was my sobriety, and I found myself in Cocaine Anonymous in 2001 at a time where Cocaine Anonymous didn't really exist. It wasn't a big fellowship whatsoever. You went to AA or you went to NA. But I went into a CA meeting and I heard who is a cocaine addict, and I thought, I really like these people. I really like these readings. These people have got a mentality that sits with me. And the biggest difference I find, and I am a fan of all fellowships, so you just got to figure out which meetings that you enjoy. And I only go to Cocaine Anonymous. I've been a member of CA since 2001, and all of my recovery comes from CA. My sponsors are in CA, or most of the people I sponsor are in CA. All of the meetings I attend are CA. I do get asked to speak at other fellowships, but that's all cool. So what I sit to you here today is a product of Cocaine Anonymous, and the reason why I really loved Cocaine Anonymous is because, as someone that really enjoyed banging up cocaine, I like to get a really big hit. I don't know about you, maybe some of you like half measures or did half an E and things like that. But when I did cocaine, I like to do a lot of it, and I like to do it really fast. And I like to have this big, intense hit, and then I'd worry about the next one. I wasn't someone that tried to spread it out over an evening or save some for tomorrow. I didn't do any of that. And the thing about cocaine addicts is that we take this same kind of attitude into our recovery, and that's why I get really high on thinking, hey, I'm going to work the steps really fast and really intensely and have a really big hit off the steps, and that's why I kind of fell in love with CA, because we were serious about this program. We understood that working the steps was going to free me from my obsession to get high. The quicker that I had this spiritual experience, the sooner I would be free from my obsession. Because there's a difference between my obsession and my compulsion. My compulsion is when I start, I can't stop. But my obsession is when I stop, I can't stop myself from starting again. So I have this physical thing, so that when I start using, I can't stop, and I don't know when I'm going to stop. I'm going to keep going until I run out of resources or run out of people to take advantage of or whatever. I'll keep going until it's done. But my obsession is that the next day, or when I come together again, I then can't stop thinking about doing something I don't want to be doing. So even though I don't want to be doing coke, I can't stop thinking about not doing coke. So I can't stop thinking about doing what I don't want to be doing until that voice is so big in my head and so loud in my head that I realise I'm still thinking about not doing something I don't want to be doing, and that sooner or later the only way I'm going to stop thinking about doing what I don't want to be doing is to get over it and just get over it and do it in order to stop thinking about not doing it. Does that make sense? Which is crazy. It's a crazy way of overcoming an obsession, is to actually give in to the obsession, just to shut the obsession up. But those are the two things. And so we understood that by working the steps, we would free ourselves from the obsession. And in those days, there was only 14 meetings of Cocaine Anonymous outside of North America. There was 10 in London, 2 in Brighton, and 2 in Bournemouth. And I was in West London. Actually, I was in North London, but my meetings were mostly in West London. There were 7 in West London, there was 3 in North London. So travelling to meetings, for me, was part of the whole experience. I'd bunk the train and underpay the bus, and it would take me like an hour and 3/4, 2 hours to get there. The meetings were only an hour long, and then it would take me 2 hours to get home, and that was like half a day gone. And for me, that felt like quality time, not spent in a crack house. I got myself a Walkman. Does anyone remember what a Walkman is? It's before MP3s, you had CDs, and before CDs, you had cassettes. And cassettes came after vinyl, which your dad might remember having. So we had these cassettes. I had these cassettes, and I used to listen to share CDs, share cassettes from conventions. And they were all the Americans were telling us the same thing: work the steps, free yourself, work the steps and have this freedom and peace from within. And so I was really keen to work the steps. But the problem with Cocaine Anonymous at that time, in 2001, is that we worked the steps from the 12 and 12, from the Purple Book. And it was really difficult. My sponsor was taking me through this. My sponsor was called One-Eyed Tim, because he's only got one eye. And we did step 1, and I had to write a load of 12 examples of powerless, 12 examples of unmanageability. Step 2, 12 examples of insanity, 12 examples of sanity. Step 3, 12 examples of God and what God looks like to me, and a whole load of stuff that went on around turning it over and handing it over, and will and your will. And then I wanted to do step 4, and Tim told me to go back to step 1, so I did a second step 1 and step 2 and step 3, and then I got back, and I was like 6 months sober now, and I got back to step 3, and I said, well, let's do work step 4 now. And he said, we can't work step 4, because I haven't done one. And so my sponsor, who had 3 years at the time, hadn't worked the steps. And there were other people who had worked the steps, but they'd got them from the Green and Gold in NA. But the Americans on this TD were talking about doing it from the Big Book of AA. So I thought, that's what I want to do. And there was a guy who used to come to our meetings called Nick the Saint. He's not a real saint. But I think he was quite a lightweight, so they used to take the piss out of him and call him Nick the Saint, because he didn't really do a lot. He got sober at 21, so maybe that was it. But he was a saint to me, and he's heard me sharing about wanting to work the steps, and he said, I can take you through them in a day. I said, that sounds like my sort of cocaine addict. And so on a Sunday morning, I went to Nick's, and he said, well, let's assume that you've got step 1, 2, and 3. And just for you guys, if any of you are worrying about it, step 1, we admitted we were powerless over cocaine and all other mind-altering substances, that our lives have become unmanageable. Can be flipped around. We admitted we were unmanageable around our cocaine and that our lives have become powerless. For me, it's all about control and choice, or lack of. And the result of me having no control and having no choice is that my life is spiritually unwell, and that I'm not a happy, joyous and free person. I'm a selfish, self-centered, greedy person. So that's the understanding of step 1. And in the book it talks about fully conceding to our innermost selves that we're addicts, and then surrendering to this process. Step 2, realising that I'm insane, my behaviour's been insane, and that actually the people in the meeting are quite sane. So I need to move towards acting like them and move away from acting like how I used to behave. And step 3, understanding that a power greater than myself, that I've came to be quite comfortable with using the word. Well, at first I used the word good energy, but then I came to accept the word God, could restore me to enough sanity, and that I could trust that God. Initially I had blind faith, because you told me to trust in it, And then I had evidence-based faith that things just were all right, and they got better, and life went on. And then I just started singing the praises of it and getting down with it and realising that God was doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. And here I was 6 months sober, and yet I hadn't smoked crack. So we got down on our knees on that Sunday morning, and we said the step 3 prayer. And for those of you that think there's 12 steps, there's actually not 12 steps, as I've just explained. Steps 1, 2 and 3, you don't have to do them as a load of written stuff, you just need to understand that stuff. The first hard work comes in step 4. And I like to think of the steps as like on a clock face. You've got 12 numbers on a clock. And as I went round each step, I was experiencing a new emotion. It wasn't a nasty emotion. They were just unfamiliar emotions. They were unfamiliar feelings. They were just new feelings. They weren't necessarily ones that I didn't like. They were just ones I didn't know. And going through step 4, and then at the end of the day into step 5, gave me this massive kind of shift as I realised how my behaviours had been affecting my feelings, and how my actions had been fueling the behaviours, which had then been making me feel even more extreme. And with that understanding, through step 6 and step 7, realising that these character defects weren't ones that I really wanted to hold on to, making a decision to let go of them, and realising then if I needed to really let go of them, I needed to revisit some of the ones where I'd been wrong, where I'd been made poor choices, and make it right and rebalance my karma. And I needed to go out of my way to go and track down some of the people who I'd hurt and make things right. And that's the bulk of the work. That's it. That's what we've got. As a result of identifying what it is that I'm doing that's making me feel dreadful, going back and changing those behaviours, coming out the other side, I don't get to feel dreadful no more. And in fact, there's a real healing process about going out of my way to make things right and to make amends. So in this book, in step 6, it talks about this is what separates the men from the boys. But actually, step 9 is what separates the men from the boys. It's when you have the ability to be humble enough to go and say, I got things wrong, I made mistakes, and I need to make it right. It's more than just an apology. It's more than that. It's not just saying I'm sorry. It's like saying, I'm sorry, but how can I make this right on your terms? And not negotiating with their terms. So if she says, I want my money back, give her her money back. So that's the program. And then so step 10 is doing steps 3 through to 9 on a daily basis. It's simply doing that. Coming out of it and seeing what I've done today and how I can improve on the errors that I've made each day and making it right before I go to bed. Step 11 is seeking through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God as I understand her, praying only for knowledge of God's will for me and the power to carry that out. So the only thing that I'm asked to pray for in step 11 is knowledge of God's will for me. That's kind of cool. It means I don't have to pray for world peace or an end to famine or end to suicide bombers. I don't have to pray for the Trump's demise. I don't have to pray for a new job or a new wife or a new car. I only have to pray for knowledge of God's will for me. Oh, and can I have some power to carry that out? So what I need to figure out is what is God's will for me and where can I find some of that power to carry that out? And I believe that God's will for me is answered in step 12. Having had a spiritual experience as a result of all these steps and all these emotions, we try to carry this message to other addicts. That's God's will for me. Oh, and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. So God's will for me is to try to carry this message to you. While I'm trying to carry this message to you, you may or may not be smoking crack, but I'm not. And while I'm trying to carry the message to you, I'm doing the next best thing, working towards becoming selfless rather than selfish, which I believe is what recovery is. And addiction is selfishness. Recovery is selflessness. So God's will for me is to come here and learn how to be selfless, how to be of use to another person. How can I bring light to someone else's quality of life? How can I bring goodness to you rather than take from you? What can I bring to your life rather than take from your life? God's will for me is to come here to Cocaine Anonymous and learn how to do that. And once I've learned how to do that, or while I'm learning how to do that, practice that in all of my affairs. So the way that I behave in this meeting is how I behave in the real world. I'm not only nice to newcomers in a meeting and can I make you a cup of tea, I have to do that at home as well. And I have to do that in my business and I have to do that with my friends. So I don't wear a mask in Cocaine Anonymous. I am the same person as I am here as I am anywhere else. And that's the lesson that I learned from this. So God's will for me is to try to carry this message. And it was summarised, I'm going to try and wrap this up, it was summarised by my sponsor, who's not Nick the Saint, it's actually Nick the Tailor, Nick the Stitch these days, has been for a long time, where he said, so I want you to explore different religious stuff and see if anything stands out for you. He wasn't telling me to become a priest or a nun or shave the top of my hair, although I am beginning to thin out. He wasn't telling me to do anything extreme. I wasn't going to start wearing a suicide vest and things like that. He was just telling me to have a look and see if there's anything that appealed to me. And I was really taken by the Dalai Lama, who is the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism, who's forced to live outside of Tibet because China have come in and raped and pillaged the Tibetan people and forced them to lose their culture and everything. And so he has to live outside of Tibet, preaching Tibetan Buddhism. And he was using really long words that I'd only ever seen in the big book. Words that were longer than wheelbarrow, which was the longest word that I knew when I got here, which has 11 letters. Now my longest word is unmanageability, which has got 15 letters. And when I was in Northampton, I don't remember his name, he said to me, no, not you, but I think you were there, one of the members said discombobulism. Was that Terry? I can't remember how many letters it's got though. And but the Dalai Lama was using all these long words like forgiveness and compassion and empathy and generosity and kindness and sympathy. And this is all this stuff that there were words that I knew, but there weren't words that I'd ever really lived by or tried to practice. And so anchoring the fact that he was talking like that, I was drawn towards him. And the Dalai Lama then said, a spiritual life is one being of service to others. And my head blew. And I thought, wow, that's it. That's what God's will for me is. I sought through prayer and meditation to understand what God's will for me is, and it's to be of service to others, which is exactly what they said to me in the 12th step. And so, yes, I can be of service to the fellowship, but I can also be of service in all of my affairs, to my family, to my work colleagues, to my friends, to the people I don't know that I meet on the streets, whatever it is. How can I be a force for good rather than someone that takes? That's the fundamental message. So I'm going to wrap this up with my promise and my guarantee, and I'm going to do my promise first. And my promise is, so hands up everyone who's got over a year sober. Okay, so those of us that have got over a year, if we look back at where we were 12 months ago, if you come and ask any of us, I reckon all of us will say that our life has evolved in the past 12 months as a result of us staying sober beyond our wildest dreams. Right? What would you reckon? Beyond your wildest dreams the last 12 months? There's stuff that's happened to me in the last 12 months. I've been to Russia twice in the past 12 months. That's crazy stuff. I jumped out of an airplane. You were there in the last 12 months. I'm still married. That's another result, or maybe not. But yeah, stuff's happened in the last 12 months that is beyond my wildest dreams, and that's the deal with recovery. It just gets better and better. So if those of you that got less than 12 months, look back at where you were, say 6 months ago, and you can already see that life has already just gone really in the fast lane. Stuff's happening really fast in the past 6 months. If you got less than 6 months, look back at where you were 90 days ago, like 3 months ago. And it's like going crazy fast at that stage. Just stuff's happening for you. It's like mental. And if you've got 30 days, look back at where you were a week ago. And the fact that you're still sitting here and you're learning all this stuff, it's like, wow, life's good, right? And if you've got less than a week, look back at where you were a week ago. And I hope that you appreciate that you're having a better day today. And so my promise to you is that it gets better and better and better. Even, though sometimes I have life that goes on. I've had stuff, my dad died. Business problems, friends that caused me grief, or wife fell off her horse, broke her pelvis in 3 places 8 weeks ago. Stuff happens, but yet I still choose recovery over And I know what it feels like to have half a gram of cocaine in my arm at a time. And I'm still choosing recovery, right? So life, I promise, it just gets better. My guarantee for you is that if you're able to sit here today and feel grateful for your recovery, if you can sit here, take a deep breath and feel gratitude for your recovery, my guarantee, and my accountant doesn't like me giving guarantees, but my guarantee is if you're able to sit here and tap into to feeling grateful for your recovery, my guarantee is that you won't drink or use today. And that's quite a big deal. But if you're not feeling grateful today, that's cool. I meet people that aren't feeling grateful all the time. My suggestion is that you hang out with the people that are feeling grateful, because generally they're the people that are winning. They've got smiles on their faces and they're enjoying life. Hang out with those guys and come back to a meeting tomorrow where there's a much better speaker. Thanks for letting me share.